one storm, and its rubble, Reeves. You are burying yourself under a pile of rocks.
Daniel Reeves didn't look up. He had heard the mason's mockery before.
No mortar, no frame. You think flat stones will hold against a mountain blizzard?
Daniel kept his hands moving. The only answer he ever gave the town was stone after stone.
You all see this. A madman stacking pebbles while winter sits on that ridge like a loaded gun.
A few neighbors shifted their weight. No one spoke up for him.
When the first hard wind snaps that thing shut, don't come crying for a real roof.
Storms coming faster than they think.
On the far ridge, a wall of cloud was building, gray, heavy with snow, and moving fast. Daniel lit a lantern and kept laying stones. The dome was his only answer, and it wasn't finished yet.
Grandfather used to say, "Stone remembers its place. Let it find home."
The storm was one day away, maybe less. He worked faster now, each stone a heartbeat.
That Irish fool is stacking a grave, not a house. You trust that with your family...
The cabin's already weak, Mr. Harris. A hard wind could snap the ridgepole.
We've got no better shelter, Frank. Unless you are offering yours.
By dusk, the last capstone settled into the apex. The dome closed like a fist.
Finished. 2 days before the snow. Grandfather, I hope you were right.
To the north, the sky blackened. A deep cold crept down the mountain.
Look at that sky, Thomas. If it breaks hard, we won't last the night.
Then we grab the children and head for the dome. It's the only stone that might hold.
The blizzard arrived with a hollow boom, and the Miller cabin shuddered to its bones.
The ridgepole is splitting, Thomas. Get Emma close.
Inside the stone dome, Daniel heard a noise above the wind, a sound like a tree snapping.
That cabin won't last another hour. They'll freeze in their beds.
He pulled on his thick wool coat and wrapped a scarf tight around his neck.
The dome will hold. Stone doesn't care about wind.
He pushed aside the heavy hide over the entrance. The storm screamed against the opening.
Grandfather would do this. Walk into the storm for a neighbor.
Then he stepped out, and the blizzard swallowed him whole. The only mark of his passing was a lantern's glow, already fading in the storm. They were a ghostly knot of figures at the cabin's corner. Thomas shielding Emma with his own body as the wind tried to tear them apart.
The roof split like kindling. We had seconds. Sarah almost got trapped inside.
This way. The dome is close. Keep your heads down and hold onto my belt.
They moved as one creature through the white fury. Behind them, the cabin's ridgepole snapped with a sound like cannon fire, and the whole structure collapsed inward. The dome materialized ahead, a solid curve of darkness. Daniel felt along the stones until his fingers found the low doorway. He pushed the family inside, one by one. Sarah cried out when the stillness hit her. The sudden absence of wind was like a physical blow.
It's all right now. Thomas, help me pile these dry branches in the center.
Daniel scraped a match across stone. The flame caught, and light leaped up the curving walls, illuminating every overlapping slab.
The stones are like a puzzle. Papa, will they fall?
No, child. Each stone locks the next. No mortar, no nails, and no storm can break it.
The storm climbed to a shrieking pitch. Above them, the stone dome seemed to breathe, tightening with each gust, then settling back.
It's going to fall. Papa, make it stop.
I don't understand. No cement, no wood. How does it stay up?
Each stone leans inward, overlapping the one below. The weight pushes outward, locking itself into a dome.
A blast of wind slammed the dome's flank. Dust sifted from the joints, but the stones held.
It sounds like it's cracking. Daniel, you sure?
It's the ice groaning, not the stone. Listen, the wind has to go somewhere. It's not going through us.
There was a sharp crack outside, a tree limb breaking. Emma screamed, but the dome didn't shift.
Stone doesn't crack. It rubs and settles. Just like grandfather said.
The blizzard raged on, but inside the stone beehive, the fire crackled. They were still alive in his stone house. Frank Harris heard a crack like a whip. A thin line split the mortar near the chimney. Cold air poured through the gap like a river, snuffing the lamp and chilling the room instantly.
Blasted mortar. It's freezing solid and cracking. 30 years of this trade.
It had only taken a few hours of hard wind for the mortar to betray him. A second crack opened along the side wall, then a third. The stones themselves were shifting.
No, no, no. I built this with my own hands. It's not supposed to move. Mortar is supposed to bind, but it's just sand and lime. It can't bend like dry stone.
He shoved rags into the gaps, but the wind ripped them out. The cold was a living thing, hunting for his breath.
That fool's dome. He built it without a drop of cement. How is it still standing?
The wind screamed against his house, and for the first time in his life, Frank Harris felt a wall tremble. Hours passed. The wind no longer shrieked but groaned like a wounded animal, and the family began to settle into exhausted silence.
Mr. Reeves, were you scared of storms when you were little?
When I was a boy, my grandfather built houses just like this. He told me they sang in the wind, not cried.
Sang? What do you mean?
When the wind slides over the stone, it finds the grooves and makes a sound, low and steady. He said it was the house breathing.
He stopped then, and for a moment, his hand rested on the cool stone behind him. Something old flickered behind his eyes. The Millers did not press further. The warmth and the low groan of the wind pulled them into a deep, dreamless sleep.
They'll know soon enough that this shape is older than the mountains themselves.
Outside, the blizzard continued its rage, but the force of it had begun to dull. The deep, killing cold had passed. Daniel fed a few more branches to the fire and kept watch, the secret of the stones heavy on his tongue. A pale seam of light appeared near the apex. Dawn, at last. The storm had passed.
Not a single stone shifted. The dome is dry as summer dust. Grandfather, you old fox.
The Millers stirred, their breath pluming in the cold air. Sarah shielded her eyes from the unfamiliar brightness.
We need to break through the door. The snow's packed tight as iron.
They braced their shoulders against the hide. With a deep groan, the drift split open and light poured in. Daniel crawled out first. The world was silent and blindingly white. The air cut like glass. Where the Miller cabin had stood, only a scatter of broken timbers remained. The rest was smooth, featureless snow.
Our home, there's nothing left, nothing but snow.
But the dome behind them stood untouched, a perfect, tapering curve of stacked flatstone, unbroken.
Papa, look! Mr. Reeves' house didn't fall down. It's like a giant beehive.
Frank pushed aside the warped door of his house. His chimney had collapsed, and the walls bulged like a ship's hull.
30 winters I've laid stone with lime and sand, and this is what it buys me.
Then he raised his eyes to the white horizon. There, in the distance, a perfect stone curve rose above the drifts.
Not a crack. Not a single crack. That devil's dome held like a mountain. I mocked him in the street. I told the Millers it was a grave, and now it's the only house still breathing.
He stood there a long minute, the cold seeping into his bones, but the fire in his gut was hotter.
I have to see it with my own hands, touch the joints, know why my mortar failed.
The snow was deep, and every step was a war. Several times he stumbled, but he did not stop.
If I die of cold out here, it's a fair price for my own foolishness.
By the time he reached the dome, his beard was stiff with ice and his hands were blue. But he had made it. The Millers were outside the dome when Frank Harris stumbled into view, his beard caked with ice.
Look, Frank Harris, come to admire the pile of rocks you called a grave?
Frank stopped 10 yards away. His eyes traced the curve of the dome, searching for a flaw.
No mortar, no frame, and it stands like a fortress. What did I miss?
Daniel watched, arms crossed. He offered no greeting, only hard-won patience.
You told us the dome would be our grave, but it's the only reason we're breathing.
The joints tighter than any mortar I've ever laid. Impossible.
Frank reached out a shaking hand and ran his fingers over the cold, dry stone.
Well, Mr. Harris, satisfied? Or do you need a hammer to prove it won't fall?
Daniel met Frank's eyes. The question was not if Frank would speak, but whether he could.
You got lucky, Reeves. One storm, no matter how fierce, doesn't prove a thing.
Then come inside, Frank. Sit down. Let me show you something luck didn't build.
Frank ducked into the dome, the Millers following. Inside, the fire still glowed, and the air was still.
When I was 12, my grandfather took me to the Burren Hills in County Clare. He showed me stone huts my ancestors built. He told me, "These stones have held for 1,000 years, boy. No mortar, no nails, just the weight of the earth." I thought it was just an old man's tale, until I built this dome with the same hands that once held his.
1,000 years. The man is either a saint or a liar. But that stone, I felt it. It's bone dry.
Look at the stones, Frank. Not a single drop of cement, yet each one locks the next tighter than any mortar joint you've ever laid.
I see the stones, Reeves, but I don't see what holds them.
Then let me show you. The secret isn't in the stone, Frank. It's in the curve.
He reached up and pressed his palm against the inward-sloping stones. Corbelling, each course steps a little farther inward until the circle closes.
My grandfather called it the old way. He said a dry stone dome would outlast empires. Every stone is a wedge. The weight from above pushes outward, but the inward slant pushes back. It locks itself.
Frank's gaze climbed the stone spiral, following the curve until it vanished in the shadow of the capstone.
Like a Roman arch, but woven into a shell. The whole thing is one continuous compression.
No mortar, Frank. Gravity does the binding. The harder the wind blows, the tighter these stones lock.
Frank plucked a loose stone from the floor, rolled it in his palm, then pressed it against the wall. It seated itself as if it knew its place.
Can we build one for my doll? A tiny stone house that won't fall on her?
Maybe one day, child. But first, Mr. Harris here needs to believe his own eyes.
Frank didn't answer. He just kept staring at the stones, as if they might reveal some final secret he still couldn't name.
You could have told the town, Reeves. Why let them mock you when you held this secret?
I did tell them. They heard no mortar and thought madman. They only saw a pile of rocks. But I didn't build this dome for the town. I built it for my Mary. She died 3 winters ago, Frank, in a cabin with a rotted ridgepole.
The name hung in the air like smoke. The fire popped, and no one spoke.
The roof collapsed under the snow, and she was gone before I could reach her. I swore that night I would build something that would never fail.
Sarah crossed the floor and knelt beside him. She said nothing, just covered his hand with hers.
You saved my children, Daniel. Your Mary would be proud. This dome is a prayer made of stone.
Maybe. I only know it held through the worst storm I've ever seen, and that's enough for me.
Frank stood by the wall, his mason's hands hanging useless at his sides. For the first time, he had no retort.
I've been a fool. He built this for a ghost and it held. My house was for the living and it failed.
Frank took a heavy breath and stepped away from the wall. The others watched, silent.
I was wrong, Daniel. My house nearly killed me. Yours saved a family.
He bent and picked up a loose stone, turning it over in his calloused hands.
I've laid stone my whole life, but I've never built a dome like this. Would you teach me?
Daniel studied Frank for a long moment, searching for the old mockery. He didn't find it.
It's not a quick lesson, Frank. The stone doesn't forgive mistakes.
I am not asking for easy. I am asking to understand what I missed.
Daniel looked at Sarah, then at Emma, who was building a tiny ring of pebbles on the floor.
All right, grab that slab by the door. We'll start with the foundation.
A small, unlikely partnership was born amid the ash and the cold.
Watch closely now. The stone must be heavier on one side. That's the edge that faces out.
He lifted a flat slab, balancing it on his fingertips before bedding it onto the lower course.
See how it overlaps? The weight pushes sideways into the wall, not straight down.
Frank nodded, his eyes tracing the joint. He selected a similar stone and placed it carefully on the edge.
Why won't it sit? It's just a flat stone.
Because you are holding it too tight. The stone knows its angle. Let it find its bed.
Daniel's rough hands covered Frank's, pressing the stone gently into place. It stopped wobbling. The stone seated itself with a final, satisfying click. No gap, no mortar, just gravity.
It's holding itself, like a handshake in stone. Mortar was always a fight.
Frank exhaled a long, white breath into the cold air and looked at Daniel with a grudging respect that might one day grow into something more. The Miller family gathered what little they had left, some blankets, a few pots, and prepared for the cold walk into town.
Daniel, we owe you everything. The children would be. I can't bear to think.
I'll make sure everyone knows what this dome did. Maybe they'll listen to a farmer more than a mason.
Goodbye, Mr. Reeves. I'll tell my doll about your singing house.
Frank stood apart, the weight of his old mockery still hanging on him, but now it was a different man who watched.
I'll help you build the next one, and my own house. I'll fix it using your method. No more mortar that cracks.
A mason and a farmer's son stacking stone for the dead. Ireland would be proud.
The Millers trudged off through the snow, 3 figures dwarfed by the white expanse, heading for a town that would soon hear a strange tale. Frank picked up another stone, turning it over in his rough hands, feeling its weight and the promise it held. They had work to do, and the dome, silent and solid, waited for the next storm. Over the following days, the dome's outer ring became a silent classroom. Daniel taught Frank how to judge a stone's belly by touch.
Feel here. This one's too round. It'll slide in the frost. Find a flatter slab.
Like this one, the edge is sharp and the weight sits toward the front.
Frank's hands learned the language of stone. The 2 men worked shoulder to shoulder, replacing the frost-cracked slabs at the base.
When this is done, show me those drawings you mentioned. The ones from your grandfather.
I will. He sketched every Clochan in our valley. They're like old friends. You'll see.
When the base was solid, Frank picked up a chisel and carved 2 small letters into a cornerstone. FH.
Now there's 2 masons in this dome. Cross or not, we're both in this stone now.
A few days later, distant figures appeared on the horizon. Townsfolk bringing sledges of salvaged timber and sacks of grain. They came to see the dome that had laughed at the blizzard. The word was spreading. The townsfolk gathered in a small circle before the dome, their breath clouding the air. Thomas stood at their front.
This was our shelter. No mortar, no frame. And it held when everything else fell.
Frank stepped forward, his face no longer hard. He looked at the crowd, then at Daniel.
I said this would be rubble. I was blind. Daniel's dome outlasted my own stone walls. Every joint in my house cracked. This dome hasn't a single flaw. No mortar, no nails, unbreakable.
He clapped a heavy hand on Daniel's shoulder, a gesture of respect that silenced any doubt in the crowd.
It's not my design. It's my grandfather's. 1,000 years of Irish stonework. I just brought it here.
The crowd murmured, some reaching out to touch the dry, cold joints of the dome. There was no mistaking the proof.
From now on, I'll be building dry stone too. That dome saved a family. My mortar nearly killed me.
The mason who had mocked him was now his loudest champion. The no-mortar dome had won. Daniel held up a worn, folded paper, a sketch his grandfather had made of the old country.
This design is 1,000 years old. My ancestors built them to outlast the Atlantic storms.
Behind his words, the image of ancient stone huts on the Burren Hills flickered, timeless, mortarless.
They didn't need mortar because they understood something we forgot. Stone holds itself.
He touched the carved cross on the doorway, a mark he had made for Mary and for all who came before. Sarah wept quietly, her hand on Emma's shoulder. She now understood the weight of that promise.
I want to give Mary a stone, so she can be part of the singing house.
She knelt and placed the stone at the base of the dome, a tiny gift next to the cross. The crowd fell silent, the only sound the wind whispering around the dome's ancient curve. Daniel folded the sketch and tucked it back into his coat. His work here finally finished. The crowd slowly dissolved into small groups, carrying the story with them. Only Frank and Daniel remained.
No more cement for everything. I'll build one of these myself. Next year, maybe two.
Then my grandfather's ghost can rest. He always said the craft would find its way across the water.
They shook hands, a farmer's son and a mason. The old feud buried beneath the dome's shadow.
Mary, you'd laugh to see this. The mason who called me a fool will now be my student.
Daniel tilted his head back and let his eyes trace the dome's perfect curve.
No mortar, no nails, unbreakable.
A raven landed on the stone cross atop the dome, a black sentinel against the fading light.
I'll bring my chisels tomorrow. We've got a lot of stone to teach this valley.
They turned toward the low doorway where the warm glow of embers still waited. The work was just beginning. That evening, as the last light drained from the sky, Daniel sat alone on a stone outside the dome. He reached into his coat and pulled out the worn sketch of his grandfather's Clochan.
Grandfather, they finally understand.
A tear slipped from his eye and landed on the yellowed paper, but his lips curved into a gentle smile. He traced the faint pencil lines with a calloused finger, remembering the old man's hands guiding his own. Behind him, the dome's doorway cast a warm, steady glow onto the snow, a hearth for the lost.
Mary, I kept my promise. No storm will ever take another family in this valley.
He folded the paper with care and held it to his chest, the weight of years finally light. Then he rose and walked toward the light, the dome's old song humming softly in the winter night. And the no-mortar dome, unbreakable, stood silent sentinel over the white stillness. Under a canopy of stars, the dome held its shape against the cold, a dark curve on a pale field. A single raven perched on the stone cross atop the dome, black against the moonlit sky. It watched for a moment, then lifted into the stillness, a speck vanishing into the frost. When the snows finally melted, green shoots pushed through the thawing earth around the old stones. Wildflowers, bluebells and saxifrage ringed the base of the dome as if nature itself had approved. Through the long summer days, The dome stood unchanged, its dry joints breathing in the heat. The raven returned each season, a faithful shadow on the cross that never fell. Autumn winds stripped the surrounding trees, but the dome shed only leaves, never a stone. Some things are built not to be pretty, but to outlast the storm. And in the valley, the no-mortar dome, unbreakable, eternal, stood as a testament to a promise kept.